We all know it's important to have defined roles and responsibilities in a project or a program. But what is tricky is deciding who does fulfill those roles and responsibilities, and do they understand what their role and responsibility is within the project board or the project management team, or lower down in the actual execution of the project. Now, I say lower down because it isn't a hierarchy of importance as much as it is a hierarchy of responsibilities. We all have a role to play, all of us being leaders in our own right, but we need to know on the project who we can turn to for further advice, guidance, who's responsible for ultimate decisions on how to deal with exceptions and variations and going outside of tolerances, or having problems within particular work streams, or needing mentoring on dealing with difficult situations, or even how to deal with a particular board issue. The board has a particular makeup, and it's difficult sometimes to decide everybody that should be on that board. So primarily you need to have somebody representing corporate, representing business, representing the sponsoring organization, often known as the senior responsible officer, or the project sponsor, or the chair of this project board. You also have to have somebody representing the end user of the product, and somebody representing the supplier or the suppliers at the project board. Representing the supplier gets increasingly complex the more suppliers you have, or particularly the more significant suppliers that you have. So previously we've spoken about an example of moving a university back onto the campus, or moving people back from a remote working only to a hybrid situation when going back to the office. Now there you can imagine that you have many different major suppliers, being the construction, being the plumbing, the electrical, the furniture supplier, the flooring, the cabling, etc. That can make for a very big board, and it can become clunky and clumsy and very difficult to convene meetings. So one does have to do that. And then the other thing is, how many of your stakeholders would you have on the board and attending board meetings? Because once again, that becomes quite clumsy the broader the base of stakeholders is. So a small project with a very focused product within a very limited part of your business or organization may not have as many stakeholders. But if your project is going to affect the community, your labor force, unions, you have the media watching you very closely. In healthcare, you have the entire population as stakeholders, patient groupings, medical representatives, clinician groups, etc. So deciding who that supplier is on the board, or suppliers, may come down to having a procurement representative or two, or one of your major management areas that manages the suppliers represented on the board. Your project manager has to be responsible for the day-to-day management of all of the execution of the work streams, delivery of the work packages, liaison with the board, single point of contact. And then your team managers are those who are managing the particular work streams to deliver particular products within their teams. You also have a number of other roles which we'll look at on the next slide. We've looked at this as a list on the previous slide, trying to make clear the defined roles and responsibilities. This is for the more visual thinkers, and also helps to paint a better picture of who is in the project management team. So on my current program, We do have the project board, which meets every 2 weeks. And then every alternate week, we have the PMT meeting on a Monday as well. So you are reporting formally every 2 weeks. And that's if you are looking for particular levels of decision where you have briefed the board and other stakeholders in advance of a board meeting, and you are presenting your report and your exception or issue or change request. So then at the project management team, you do have more or all of the team managers represented who would not have an opportunity to make representation at a board meeting. Within that project management team, you have several responsible areas. We've mentioned the project manager. You have the change authority, which can be a delegated subset of the board or a separate function within the organization who will review all issues that result in change requests. You have project assurance, which is another semi-autonomous group as a delegation of the project board who is looking at all aspects of project delivery and product delivery. You have project support, which could be your PMO or a centralized PMO who assigns a project support officer to you. And then, of course, we have the team managers who are responsible for delivery of particular products within a work stream, who agree a work package with the project manager in order that the project manager can manage the team managers, the project manager not managing the actual delivery of the work. Unless, however, we have mentioned elsewhere, and the Prince2 manual speaks about, where the project manager might be the team manager of a particular work stream, whether it's because a team manager is not available, maybe the project manager has the necessary subject matter expertise in order to be the right person to manage that work stream anyway. Another word about the project board in their constitution is I recently was called in as an independent program manager to try to get a particular program back on track. And I was surprised to see that there were 24 attendees on the project board call. Now, in this day of remote working, of course, it is so much easier to have 24 people attend a project board call, whereas in the days of physical presence around a meeting table, you could only fit 8 people or whatever into the room, maybe with 1 or 2 on a video conference. Now, you could have multiple stakeholders on that call. A classic example in healthcare is if you are implementing a project which cuts across, for example, a hospital trust, you have serious stakeholders from all of the specialties within a hospital, then including operations, administration, booking, the front office, the human resources side, etc. And that's where you end up with a very large audience on a call, and quite clearly most do not have a say or a vote in some of the major decisions. However, if they do, you have a dynamic which is difficult to manage. You also have to look to the type of person who is chairing that project board. Now, I've been on calls where the permanent SRO does not drill into the detail of the project reports. And that's great because a project report to the board should be a highlight or exception report. However, where there are issues, that SRO needs to hold the project manager to account. And one of the areas where I've seen projects drift is where the SRO is not strong enough to hold the project manager to account, or does not want to override other members of the board. And as Prince2 says, the project board is not a democracy. So you need a strong SRO. On the same program where the SRO was not particularly strong, in their absence, their delegee attended and chaired the board, and the personality type and the experience in chairing, leading project boards was evident in the kind of decisions and drive that took place in the absence of the SRO. One might need to find a way of coaching that SRO in holding one accountable, or having your management coach the SRO on how to have a more effective board and board meetings and driving accountability of the various performers in the board and the project manager.